If ever an animal needed the help of a public relations guru, this is it. Aided and abetted by Hollywood, the shark's reputation for aggression is unsurpassed. But Dr. Sam Gruber and Tim Culver think sharks have had a bad press. And in the warm waters of the Bahamas, they're trying to dispel the half-truths that up till now struck terror into the hearts of anyone dipping their toes in the ocean. No longer are sharks monsters of the deep, says Gruber. They're just misunderstood. In the watery world of the shark, the ability to hold your breath is one small plus. Tim Culver can now stay down for almost 5 minutes.
He's become an incredible swimmer. He's like water boy. Now he can free dive to 100 feet. I'm talking about 100 feet, that's 35 meters.
Free diving allows me to get closer to animals in that I appear to be more part of their world for the 2 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever that I'm underwater. I'm not real sure what goes on inside the head of a shark when it's swimming with me or when I'm close to it. You know, you get the sense that they are looking right at you. They will give you a really close look and maybe do another circle around just to check you out and see what you're doing.
The Shark Lab team has discovered that the safest way to release the sharks is to remove the hook from the animal's mouth first and wait until it settles on the seabed before releasing the rope from the tail. But the volunteer, in this case Tim, who has the task of slipping the noose clear, needs to have his wits about him, not to mention a modicum of courage as well. Once the rope is finally freed, Tiger isn't going to hang about, but then neither is Tim. This is classic grizzly bear country, the edge of the majestic Rocky Mountains in British Columbia. Wayne McCrory was born and raised here.
I probably grew up with some of the frontier mentality towards bears. My role models were very aggressive, macho-oriented, and that had some influence on me. I hunted, mostly meat hunted for many years. I shot a few bears. I regret that. I could never shoot a grizzly. But I think as I came to terms with that and realized that, you know, I didn't need to kill things to live or whatever, and as I began to learn through my career more about the animals themselves, bears seem to draw my attention more than other species for a variety of reasons. They are the wildest thing you can ever meet to me. They epitomize the wild spirit of the wilderness. We call that jawing. It's a form of bears gently playing with each other, and it's actually quite a beautiful thing. I've observed bears playing or showing affection towards each other and gone to my colleagues and they said, well, you know, that's not an emotional thing. I mean, we're animals, we're emotional, but nothing else can have emotions or feelings or sensitivities. If those aren't feelings, I don't know what they are.
In the heart of Canada's wild Rocky Mountains, something is stirring. After 40 years of silence, wolves have returned to Banff National Park, and that makes Dr. Paul Paquette a very happy man. A wolf pack is a hierarchy. Most groups have less than 7 animals, but there can be 20 or 30. Top dog status is afforded to only one breeding pair, called the alpha male and the alpha female. In this case, Queenie, the light grey, and Columbo the tan. Anyone else is definitely lower class, and they know it. In this case, Queenie is showing she's boss. She stands tall, she holds her tail high, she makes the moves.
Now, the response of the subordinate wolf is to do just the opposite. The body position will become lower and lower. It may even roll over to expose itself to the more dominant wolf. Again, thinking of the tail right up against the belly. And that wolf is saying to the more dominant wolf, look, I respect your position, I respect you, I'm subordinating myself to you.
The humpback whale, 40 tons of mystery. An inscrutable ocean traveler for 60 million years. The stuff of legend and myth. Even today, the human race knows little of the humpback whale. But for 25 years, researcher Dr. Jim Darling has been pulling back the humpback's veil of secrecy. It's the key to the whale's future. The more we know about humpbacks, the more fascinated we become, and the greater is our own personal stake in their survival.
The standard method for studying whales was to go out and either on a whaling ship and look at a series of corpses or actually kill whales for the purpose of research.
But now, thanks to Jim Darling and a new generation of researchers, we're slowly putting together a picture of the whale's life.
Humpback whales are what we would call medium-sized baleen whales. They range from maybe 30 to 40 feet long. Often people talk in terms of humpbacks weighing approximately a ton a foot, so that's a 30 to 40 foot long whale. It weighs 30 to 40 tons. Humpback whales are different than all the other whales and are immediately recognizable by their very long, often white or partially white pectoral fins or flippers, which extend, oh boy, anywhere 10 to 15 feet from the sides of the whale. And these animals literally, if you see them from the air, pretty much fly through the water. Singers are generally lone whales, and what we do is simply go out into the channel and listen with a hydrophone. So whenever you put them down, you can hear some humpbacks. The trick is to home in on a single singer, and sometimes you get lucky and it happens quite quickly. Other times it takes a number of hours where you simply travel around, to different locations, listen, and when it gets louder, you're heading in the right, heading for the right place. And eventually you find those lone whales which are doing the singing and can start the day's work. What's going on here? He shifted to another scene, I think.
Sichuan province in the heart of China, land of the great dynasties, home of the most loved and most endangered of all the Earth's creatures. Only 1,000 giant pandas remain in the wild. Dr. Sue Menka has had a lifelong passion for pandas. In 1987, a dream came true when she was sent to Wolong to work with these enchanting animals. Now her work here may be critical in helping save the giant panda from becoming little more than a zoological rarity, or perhaps, unthinkably, even just a memory. Today, the panda is a world symbol for endangered wildlife, but until 100 years ago, no Westerner had ever seen one. Pandas are elusive animals, living solitary lives hidden in forests on inaccessible mountainsides. And up until very recently, virtually nothing was known about what made these animals tick. But today, researchers like Sue Menke are helping to solve some of the mysteries.
I'm a pandaholic from way back. Ever since I was a kid, I couldn't help looking at a panda without going ooh and ah. And getting to know their personalities and learning about the land they come from just makes them more intriguing to me.
They've been around a very long time, 60 million years, much longer than their cousins the chimpanzees, gorillas, and even ourselves. These are ring-tailed lemurs, and they live only in the forests of Madagascar. Dr. Lisa Gould saw her first lemur 13 years ago and was instantly hooked. Now her field studies are shedding some light on an animal about which little was known, and like so many other primates, is fighting for its survival in an unforgiving world.
Lemurs live in family groups, and they also have friends, and they make new friends, and they lose friends, and they have their kin around them, just like we do.
Ring-tailed lemurs live in small groups, related to each other through the females. The family offers protection, they keep each other warm, and together they'll defend their territory against intruders. Orca, the most powerful predator in the sea. But beyond its tough guy exterior, the whale called Killer is also remarkably graceful, highly intelligent, and endlessly fascinating. Dr. Paul Spong has spent the last 30 years studying orca. His discoveries challenge us to imagine a new kind of relationship to the world of whales.
One of the things that fascinates me about orca is the mystery, that we have kind of scratched the surface of what an orca is, but we really don't know. Every time you turn around, there's something new. Their lives as social animals are rich and complex, and we're just beginning to unravel some of the details of that. That's why it's still exciting.
Every summer, the waters of Johnson Strait explode with activity as the orca ride into town. Their target is the shimmering silver hordes of migrating salmon. This community is made up of 16 pods, totaling around 215 individuals. Orca have good eyesight, but for hunting salmon in this cool, murky water, the whales need stronger stuff. Their secret weapon? Sonar. Streams of loud clicking sounds echo back to the whales, pinpointing the location of their prey. The coast of Hudson's Bay, 60 frozen northerly degrees. This is the undisputed domain of the polar bear, an animal whose size and strength are legendary, whose beauty is undeniable. Lord of the Arctic. An animal so perfectly adapted for the harshest and most unforgiving climate in the world. One man discovered their beauty and dedicated almost 30 years of his life to share their allure with the outside world. Through his work, Dan Gurevich would bring the very spirit of the polar bear to millions. Young males, like Arctic sumo wrestlers, test each other in mock battle. These war games prepare them for the real thing, the life or death contest next spring, to win themselves a mate. Throughout history, the dolphin has intrigued and delighted the human race. Their natural acrobatic antics never fail to thrill us, but at the heart of our fascination is the lure of contact with an intelligent alien being. In the wild, new studies show the dolphin to be a remarkable, socially developed animal. Proof, says biologist Diane Claridge, that keeping dolphins captive for our own ends is simply barbaric. This is where they belong. It's time, says Diane, to free the dolphins. For most people, snorkeling in tropical seas could hardly be classified as a hard day at the office. But for marine biologists, the ocean is where you come to work. Diane and Ken are trying to find out just how well the bottlenose dolphin society of the northern Bahamas is standing up to being relentlessly hunted for live shipment to marine parks around the globe. One dolphin called Bahama Mama was held captive for 17 years, first in Nassau and then finally here at Treasure Island. After a life behind bars, it's not surprising that she was showing abnormal behavior. She'd originally been caught more than 100 miles south of Abaco and spent a life in dolphin jail. Then, one May evening, Bahama Mama decided she'd had enough. Without anybody's help, she pushed through the barriers on her way to freedom. According to local dolphin lore, she'd signed her own death warrant. Captive dolphins didn't stand a chance of surviving in the wild. When Bahama Mama pushed through the fence on her way to freedom in Abaco Bay that warm May night, no one would give decent odds that she'd survive after 17 long years behind bars. With so much to relearn outside the chain-link fence, the animal wouldn't stand a chance. But the naysayers were forgetting one thing. Inside Bahama Mama's melon-shaped head was a brain as large and complex as our own. 6 months after Bahama Mama had made her dash to freedom, Ken and Diane were out on the water, following a group of the resident Abaco dolphins, when a dorsal fin came to the surface. A bell rang in the recesses of Diane's photographic memory. When the dolphin next came up for air, the long lens was ready, and bingo, she was sure it was Bahama Mama. When the European settlers first set eyes on the Western Plains, this land was at peace with itself. A well-tuned web of life, a prairie Eden where every creature had its place, both hunter and the hunted. But in one short century, man put asunder what nature had taken eons to perfect. The price was high. The swift fox was one casualty. Like bison, once there were millions, then there were none. 50 years on, one woman is fighting to bring these animals back to Canada's heartland.
They are amazing, unusual and extraordinary animals that you can fall in love with. I mean, people call me all sorts of things. A fox-hugging greenie is mainly the main thing, but it's not that. I'm not breeding them to have cuddly little foxes around. I'm breeding them so that we can put them back, and then they're gone. They're established, they're successful, and I can stop doing it. I'll do something else. But first I want to get them undeniably established. And I think that's 250 breeding pairs. I mean, I really love animals. I really like doing it. It gives me a bang.
Now all Cleo can do is wait. Sometimes it'll take the foxes 3 days before they summon up the courage to explore. But George and Gemini are made of sterner stuff and venture forth in record time, just under 4 hours.
I just feel like they belong here, and I'm just a mechanism for putting them back where they ought to be. And I really hope they make it.
Meet one of nature's great losers, the North Atlantic right whale. Once hunted so relentlessly, it was thought to be extinct. Today, we're rediscovering this rarest of whales and playing a part in its struggle for survival. Deborah Tobin and Dr. Moira Brown are among the right whale's best friends. Their efforts as researchers and activists are illuminating its plight and helping give the last few survivors a fighting chance.
There has to be an empathy. I don't think that conservation of these animals is really going to be effective if people don't feel some compassion and really seriously want to do something.
I get to phone up Deb and say, hey, Calvin's a girl. Calvin was the orphaned calf of Delilah that we had a biopsy sample from. And we named it Calvin. We didn't know if it was a boy or a girl. And we ran the DNA test, and sure enough, it turned out to be a girl, probably because we gave it a boy's name. So I can sort of give her that kind of scientific information in a really neat way and learn things and tell her things about the animals that would have taken us years to find out by any other means.
Perhaps more than any other marine mammal, the right whale's future depends on people. In the past, we were their worst enemy, but with greater dedication and commitment, we could become the right whale's greatest ally and help them regain their rightful place in the North Atlantic Ocean. Long ago, 10 million years at least, in the equatorial jungle of Southeast Asia, the earliest of our human ancestors evolved from the orangutan. Since that time, our paths seldom crossed, until a century or so ago, when people began unwittingly to bring these magnificent animals to the brink of extinction. But one determined woman is now fighting back to save the endangered orangutan and ensure its survival in the treetops of Borneo. It was Borneo's famous great ape, the orangutan, that brought Baruti to this undiscovered paradise in 1971. Since then, she's dedicated her life to these enchanting creatures.
Swirchi is about 3 years old. He's a local boy. He had been held captive in a logging camp close by. And we named him Schwartzy after Schwarzenegger, the actor, because when we first encountered him, he looked relatively weak and faint, and we thought that this would be a name that would perhaps encourage him to grow big and strong.
Bagon spent the first half of his life behind bars until Baruti secured his freedom.
When he was a small infant, he was captured, taken from his mother, taken to a zoo in Java, where he spent at least 10 years, maybe more.
Dr. Galdicus brought Bagon back to Camp Leakey. In the zoo, he'd had a reputation for being wild and dangerous. But when the cage door was finally opened to set him free, Bagon just took to the treetops to get his bearings and then quietly slipped into the forest and wasn't seen again for well over a year.
Imagine spending, say, 20 years in a zoo, and then at the threshold of adulthood, being released back to the wild, and then spending almost another 20 years in the wild. I mean, what a life story he could write if he could write his autobiography. And what his feelings must be. I mean, I'd love to be able to talk to him and ask him what it felt like, what it feels like.
In the heart of darkest Africa, mysterious Rwanda is the land of 1,000 hills, where tribalism and hate have become a way of life and death. And yet, in the midst of this madness, half of the world's entire population of endangered mountain gorillas is trying to survive to the 21st century and beyond. An end to the horrors of the Civil War is far from certain, yet Dr. Pascale Sicot has put her own life on the line, returning to Rwanda to ensure the safety of these, the rarest of our primate ancestors.
Gorillas are interesting because when two groups meet, the males, the silverbacks, will display. Now we hear somebody coming this way, so that's why she's looking this way. So the silverbacks display at each other. That's okay. It's just a small fight in gorillas. There are only about 600 mountain gorillas. So this is really a population which obviously needs to be protected because it's so small. And I think it has all the chances in the world to survive, given that the habitat is there to support them.